Let's welcome in good friend of the show, an absolute American hero, Dr. Peter McCullough. It's good to see you again, brother. How are you?
Great to see you.
Can I ask you a personal question with me as your patient for a second, if you don't mind? Okay. So I was in LA at the end of July. I was getting ready to go do a presentation for Nefarious at Pastor Jack Hibbs' church. And as I'm getting dressed to go, I suddenly lose hearing in my right ear. And I'm only hearing like buzzing, and it sounds like there's fireflies going on at night constantly. As soon as I get home, I go right to the ENT and the specialist. They tell me that there has been a rash of these over the last couple of years, and that they think it is some kind of a viral infection. My eardrum is working, functioning, everything is totally intact. There is some kind of a viral infection that has caused the nerves in my ear to not get the exact sound that they're supposed to get. They give me weeks of steroids and steroid injections. I get steroid injections directly into my ear, in fact, to try to resurrect these nerves. And they told me there's about 70% odds that over time they can get me back to a level that I can use a hearing aid. And I would say my hearing's improved maybe 40 or 50% since July. But there's a woman in my small group we're very close with. She had this happen to her after she took the jab. I am wondering, I never took the jab, so I'm wondering if the strange viral infection and rash of these over the last couple of years could be a long form of COVID infection. And if this is further proof that basically the last few years, Peter, everybody was a lab rat, whether you took the vaccine or not, since it all came from the same research, we were all essentially long-term going to be lab rats and figure out whether we were infected or injected, what the long-term ramifications of that research were.
It's true. Nearly all of us have been exposed to the Wuhan Spike protein. Now, a paper by Clausen and colleagues from Harvard showed that. So, when I see patients in the office, we check antibodies against the spike protein. Invariably, they're elevated. Rarely I'll find somebody who hasn't been exposed. What you're describing is an auditory loss. What's affected the auditory nerve. We know that COVID infection affects the various forms of the nerves for taste and smell. It can affect facial nerves, cause Bell's palsy. And we know with the COVID vaccines, there's clear-cut papers showing hearing loss after the COVID-19 vaccines. It's all related to the spike protein. So I would say, yes, in the absence of another explanation, I think you either had another re-exposure of SARS-CoV-2, and you may have had it, or been exposed through a mechanism called shedding.
So define shedding, because if you aren't part of the quote-unquote anti-vax community, like my assistant Todd is, this is a familiar phrase to them. For those of us that are just getting new to all these kinds of things here in the COVID era, what does that mean? What is shedding? What is it?
Shedding means that one has been exposed to the spike protein or to the messenger RNA from close contact with another individual. We know both of them can travel via exosomes, which are small phospholipid packets. That can be an exhaled breath, through sweat, various forms of body fluid, typically, very close contact. In studies, there was a big project, for instance, called the EVA project in the UK, showing 78% of women who take a vaccine, they actually have menstrual abnormalities. And those who even didn't take a vaccine, they end up having menstrual abnormalities. There's been plenty of these reports that have occurred. I have interviewed on my show, Steve, expert former INSERM scientist Helene Benoon, and she's the world's expert on shedding. She believes it clearly happens for sure in people who've taken the vaccine within 30 days, close contact, and then now 2 studies, one in the United States, one in Japan, showing the messenger RNA comes through breast milk. The spike protein may be shedded potentially for a much longer duration of time. It's been shown in the human body now for months, maybe even years afterwards. And that's the rationale for what our recent proposal to actually undergo spike protein detoxification.
How worried are you?
Every signal we see, cardiovascular disease, neurologic, blood clots, immune disease, and now cancer, Steve, every single indicator is up. Now, there can be debates on why all these chronic diseases are up, all-cause mortality up in every single area of the world. The two big exposures we've had are COVID-19 infection and now COVID-19 vaccines. And I think both mechanisms have led to this wave of disease. I think more powerfully with the vaccines, since the vaccines are largely genetic, they're given every 6 months, and they install the genetic code for the disease-promoting and lethal Wuhan Spike protein.
So, eventually, as you know this better than I do, viruses eventually become endemic. They mutate. They become less severe over time. But with these mRNA injections, they're rolling out new lines of these constantly. They're rolling out not just even new variants, but whole new ones, like for RSV and other maladies at the exact same time. How much of this do you think is that this version of this technology was rushed, given the urgency of the moment and the incentives of Operation Warp Speed to rush it, as opposed to, is the technology itself fallible, fundamentally fallible? For example, Elon Musk has been very vocal looking at the data for COVID vaccination and how terrible that data is. But he is adamant that he thinks, as a guy that's made $30 billion on the cutting edge of science, he thinks mRNA technology actually has a bright future outside of what we've seen with its debut with COVID vaccination. What's your view as a clinician?
Let's take messenger RNA, Steve. In a paper by Lalani and colleagues from British Medical Journal, messenger RNA has been in development since 1985. Tens of billions of U.S. government dollars poured into it. No technology that our government has invested more in. Mm-hmm. In 2012, DARPA, the research unit of the military, on its website, it's still on its website today, announced the ADEPT P3 program, said it would end pandemics in 60 days using messenger RNA technology. Paper by Lee and colleagues, over 9,000 patents on messenger RNA. And all the patent assignees, Steve, are big entities. At the top is Sanofi, then CureVac, BioNTech, Moderna, and the U.S. government. No single person invented messenger RNA. Someone who comes up in 2021 and said, I invented it. That's impossible. This has been going on for decades. Now the Nobel Prize is awarded to Carrico and Weissman. Carrico's got 14 patents. Weissman's got 150 or so patents. And their Nobel Prize is how they made messenger RNA long-lasting in the human body. I mean, it has been tested in multiple applications, Steve. It's a bust. It's an absolute bust. It was just the worst idea ever to install the genetic code for a lethal protein without being able to shut it off. It wasn't the fact that it was rushed. It's just ill-conceived from the very beginning.
So I want to make sure the layman out there like me, Dr. McCullough, understand what you just said, which is just because the public became mindful of this in the spring of 2020, and then with the advent of Operation Warp Speed, and then in January of 21 with the rollout of these injections, just because the public became mindful, this research had been going back decades. They've been trying to master this for decades, and it was a colossal failure. For example, Moderna was 0 for 8 in bringing products to market prior to Operation Warp Speed. So that body of evidence says to you, as a guy who has started research journals and then has to take that research as a clinician and put it into practice for patients. So you've been on both ends of this, right? You've been on the research theoretical end, and then you've been on the applicable end. That body of evidence tells you this just isn't going to work.
It's true. We can't force the human body to accept foreign genetic code and produce a foreign protein. Now, messenger RNA that's fully humanized, that's producing a missing protein like insulin in type 1 diabetes or alpha-galactosidase and Fabry's, that's a different story. But messenger RNA for vaccines is a completely failed concept. It's a dangerous concept. And, the U.S. government wasn't honest. They should have been honest. Trump should have come out and said, listen, it's on our website. Our military's been working on this since 2012 because it's on the website. It's called the ADEPT P3 program. Anybody who does a few clicks would have seen that the U.S. military is working on messenger RNA to end pandemics in 60 days. That's in 2012.
The implications of that are, I don't know what the technical term is for not good, but the implications of what you just said are, well, not good, Peter.
Well, it's simply not being honest. If it would have been presented to us differently from the day one and said, listen, we've got a problem. The U.S. and Chinese have had a collaboration for years trying to make a biological threat, an infectious and lethal coronavirus, and now it's gotten out of the lab. And now, the good news is we've been working on solutions, monoclonal antibodies and vaccines. We're going to try to help people through this U.S.-Chinese disaster. If people would have been honest about it. But what we've learned through the House Select Committee, Steve, is amazing. Fauci, Collins, a whole cadre of scientists, they collaborated to conceal this global security threat. They actually intentionally lied to the world and said the virus came out of nature. They knew it came out of the Wuhan lab. The research by Ralph Barrick and Dr. Shengling Li was published in 2015, 2016, Nature Communications, Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. They said they created SARS-CoV-2. They called it the Wuhan Institute of Virology 1 virus. That was the prototype SARS-CoV-2. Mm-hmm. So that's in 2015. Instead of bringing Ralph Barrick out, Dr. Barrick, how do we get ourselves out of this disaster? You masterminded this virus funded by the U.S. The U.S. wanted to do this. But instead, it's just been a house of cards. It's been one lie after another.
I've got only 90 seconds, but if you could enact three things right now, given everything you've just told us and everything else you know that we didn't have time to get access to, what would those three things be?
I say, number one, I've called in the U.S. Senate, now the European Parliament, pull all COVID-19 vaccines off the market before anyone else is harmed. Number two, U.S., EU, and all westernized nations pull out of the WHO. They're not trustable. And number three, I'm following the World Council for Health. I am recommending a halt on all childhood vaccines, the entire vaccine schedule, until this is clarified, since messenger RNA is now on the schedule without any concerns for safety by the ACIP panel.
Dr. Peter McCullough, the wellness company, twc.health. You want to check them out, twc.health. They just came on board with us here at The Blaze too, by the way, twc.health. It's always good to see you, my friend. Thank you very much.
Thank you.